The message, the principal message to Israel is, get out of Palestine, it's not your country. Over the last 30 years, I have vocally supported the rights of Palestinians. I'm a defender of international law, the United Nations, and human rights. I have consistently criticised the illegal colonisation through settlements of land which does not belong to Israel and which is rightfully Palestinian. It has made me the target of political attack from those who believe otherwise. These attacks have come from Israel itself, but also, and in some ways more viciously, from UK-based organisations who claim to represent UK Jewish opinion. They tend to transform the presumption, or that presumption, into the defence of everything Israel does, however extreme. In April, Israel's reprisals in Gaza were at their most intense. The death toll had reached 30,000. A high proportion were women and children. Hundreds of thousands were being forcibly displaced, and they were being denied food and water. In addition, the UN and UNRWA were being derided, international law was being broken, and many across the world were calling for arms sales to Israel to cease. In what was just the latest of many interventions in which I defended the importance of international law, I was interviewed on April the 4th by Nick Ferrari of LBC. In that interview, I called for an arms embargo and also accused some senior Conservative figures of not believing that illegal settlements were indeed illegal. I also accused them of promoting Netanyahu's extreme policies to the point where some should be sacked from the then government or expelled from the House of Lords. Now, what happened then is a political scandal which discredits the Conservative Party and which amounts to a McCarthyite witch hunt which is nothing less than despicable. This has gone on for too long. Money, improper influence, and the promotion of Israeli interests above our own have contributed to the destruction of the UK's independent foreign policy. They've also undermined UNRWA, the UN, and international law, and it all comes at the expense of innocent Palestinians. So, in summary, we must all adhere to international law and uphold the activity of its institutions, its courts, and the people who work within them. In doing so, I will not be bullied or silenced, and I hope all decent journalists and public figures will assist in that endeavour. When you have the most burning issue in foreign policy still occurring, and you try and bury it during an election, there's going to be a reaction. And I think there was concern that the mentions of a possible Palestinian state on the hands by both parties were lukewarm. And in fact, on the Conservative Party, if you read the manifesto, there was almost nothing about foreign policy whatsoever. The words in the Labour manifesto were very much better, and some of the words we've heard from the new Prime Minister since are encouraging. An important part of this process is to home in on what will soon be a leadership election in the Conservative Party, where some of the contenders are at the very, very extreme end of the spectrum on this issue and need to be exposed very, very clearly and need to be made to commit to international law and a belief in the illegality of settlements. Where anti-Semitism definitely exists, it should be rooted out. I feel that very, very strongly. It's unacceptable in any form. But where there is not anti-Semitism, the accusation of such should not be used to try and stop legitimate comment on Israel. And we all know there is a difficulty of the conflation between domestic Jewish opinion, or what people claim to be Jewish opinion, and the conduct and defense of Israel. The two, in large part, are separate and should remain so. And so what I sometimes call abuse Semitism is where an unjustified accusation of anti-Semitism is used to bully or silence is not acceptable. So there are some equal and opposite forces in play here. I think in terms of the Conservative Party, this has gone on for too long. There has been a collusion at the very top, born of money, donor money, and everything I've described both in my book and in my comments today. On your first question, I think that unjustified accusations of anti-Semitism used for other purposes is very damaging to the Jewish community. And I find that upsetting, and I think it is really very worrying. It's not in their interests. And I think that some of those who claim to be the voice of the Jewish community are particularly extreme and do not represent the Jewish community, where I think we should be supporting moderate Israelis and moderate Palestinians, and those who are the vast majority in this country who go about their daily business as Jewish people, not feeling the same sort of aggressive sentiments as those who keep on releasing aggressive press releases. I'm fully in support of the marches, but I utterly condemn violence and vandalism. And I would urge anyone who supports the Palestinian cause not to do anything that undermines it by making gestures or conducting stunts which offend the basic decent sentiments of people in the country. So don't go to the cenotaph, don't smash windows, don't say things in phrases which are not sensibly thought through, and stick to the basic principles. Now, one of the main principles or statements that's been made is we want a ceasefire. Well, I am in favour of a ceasefire. I also have argued for an end to selling arms to Israel. But the fundamental principle is that settlements are illegal. That's the starting point. It's taking Palestinian land over many decades, which is the origin of this problem. Then the Conservative government, effectively rejecting the ICC and its process, was itself not acceptable. If we are signatories to an international treaty which has set up a court, we should follow and support that court. The same applies to the United Nations. So what we've seen over the last few years is the rise of politicians who think they can challenge the propriety of institutions of which they are a part or to which they are a signatory. That's not acceptable.